Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Bakes here, and thank you for joining me for today's random horror review. Today's movie is one that I'm honestly super excited to talk about. This is a movie I grew up watching all the time, but honestly, it has been a little while since I last checked this movie out, obviously, besides rewatching it for today's review. And speaking of today's review, I should quickly say as well, normally when I'm talking about movies on my channel, I try to avoid spoilers to the best of my abilities and bite my tongue and dance around some major plot points. And I do that because for people who haven't seen these movies before, I want them to experience the twists and turns and reveals for themselves and have that experience. But with today's movie, there are a lot of details and things going on that I do feel like talking about, which will kind of drift into spoiler territory. And I'll still do my best to not give any major things away. But like I said, there's some details and things that I want to talk about that might go into that spoiler territory. So just keep that in mind going forward here. But either way, today's movie is 1992's The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Like I said, I used to watch this movie a lot when I was younger. And I kind of forgot how much I love this movie. There's a handful of movies that come to mind where I forget how much I truly love them. One that comes to mind off the top of my head is American Psycho. Like, whenever I'm talking to people about American Psycho, I'm always like, yeah, I love that movie, it's really good, blah, blah, blah. But every time I rewatch it, it just blows my mind, and I'm like, fuck, like, I really love that movie. And it's kind of the same here with The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Like I said, I watched this movie a lot when I was very young. Probably way too young to be watching a movie like this, if I'm being honest. Not because the movie is overly scary or gruesome or anything like that. It's just got a lot of mature themes and a lot of themes that definitely would have been going over my head at such a young age. Like, from memory, I never remember like not understanding what was going on in this movie, but if you've seen it before, there's a lot of mature things and details that a young mind probably wouldn't be able to digest. But oddly enough, really weird, I think it was my mum that recommended this movie to me, and I say weird because my mum wasn't a horror movie fan. She didn't like movies that were scary or anything like that. And I should quickly add, this is not a horror movie, it's definitely more of a thriller, but it's got a lot of unsettling, skin crawling, disturbing, gross stuff in it, like mentally gross stuff. And yeah, she knew that I liked horror movies and scary stuff, so I remember her saying, even though it's not a horror movie, you should check out The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, you might like it. And as I said, when I was a kid, I used to watch it all the time, so it was a good recommendation. So without delaying any longer, let's get into the plot for The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, because I've done a lot of rabbling so far. So in this movie, we have this family, husband, wife, and they already have a young daughter. But the wife is pregnant with their second child. At the start of the movie, she's maybe like 3 months pregnant, something like that. And she's got an appointment to see a doctor and get a checkup, make sure that the baby's okay and that she's okay and everything like that. But the doctor that she usually sees, from memory, I think he's retired or on holiday or something like that, so she has to see a new doctor. And this new doctor turns out to be a not very good person. I'm not sure what I can say on YouTube, but he ends up essaying her. But it's done very sneakily, and I mean, there's no way of doing it subtly, but he sort of does it in a subtle nature where, like, he grabs onto parts of her and maybe holds on for a little bit too long, pretends to put on a glove but doesn't actually. Like, he does it in a very, like, sneaky, quiet way. Even to the point where once she leaves the office and feels very disturbed and uncomfortable with what had happened, she talks to her husband about it, and she's not even sure if she wants to go forward reporting this doctor, but the husband says, you know, do you truly feel like something went wrong in that office? Do you feel in your heart that that wasn't right? And she ends up reporting the doctor. They agree it's the right thing to do. And after they report the doctor and their story comes forward, some other patients of his that have had similar experiences come forward and also report him, and it ends up piling up and up and up, and the doctor hears it on the news, and obviously he knows that he's in the wrong, there's no way of getting out of it, so he ends up offing himself. Yeah, obviously he knows that he's in the wrong, there's nothing he can do, so he ends up taking his own life. But when he takes his own life, he leaves behind his wife, who was also pregnant with their child. After hearing the news that he has offed himself, she has an accident, and the baby that was inside of her stomach ends up dying. 6 months passes by, and the story's been all over the news and everything. So the widow hears about the lady that came forward and initially got the ball rolling on these accusations. She finds out who she is and a bit about her life, and she decides that she is going to get revenge. And how she goes about this revenge is she decides she's going to infiltrate the family by pretending to be a nanny and get hired and get within this house and in between the walls and everything, and destroy it from the inside. And I won't go into deeper detail on how she's planning to do that, but she wants to get closer to the family, the kids, and everything going on there. And I'll leave it there. I've done a lot of rambling. This is a very long intro, so let's get into my thoughts of The Hand That Rocks the Cradle from 1992. Alright, my bad guys, that was probably one of the longest intros I'd ever done for one of my random horror reviews, but it just goes to show how much I love this movie because I just wanted to talk about it on and on. And I know it probably sounds like I gave a lot away for that plot description, but trust me, that all happens within the first 15 minutes of this movie, and there are still plenty more twists, turns, and everything to come. So I didn't give too much away, believe it or not. But moving on, this movie has a very solid cast, notably Rebecca De Mornay, who plays the nanny. Her character's name is Peyton. And I'll loop back around to her later because there's a lot I want to talk about with her character. But rewatching the movie this time around was the first time I ever realised how stacked the secondary cast is in this movie. Like, there's a character in this movie named Solomon, who is essentially the family's groundskeeper, and he has a mental handicap, I presume autism or something like that, but he is played by Ernie Hudson. As I said, I grew up watching this movie all the time, and for some reason it just never registered in my mind that that was Ernie Hudson until I was watching it this time around. Most people would know him from Ghostbusters or something like that. But then you also have Julianne Moore, who just plays this secondary role as like this family friend, Marlene. It's just so stacked, and I never realised until watching the movie this time around. It was crazy. I just couldn't believe I never registered some of the people in this movie. But getting back to Solomon, because he's always been like a favourite character of mine in this movie. My heart breaks for Solomon during some moments in this movie. If you've seen it before, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about, justice for Solomon. And I'm just thinking about it now. I think this is probably the first time in my life that I had seen someone with a mental handicap in a movie. Obviously, Ernie Hudson himself isn't, but, a character portrayed with a mental handicap. I don't have a follow-up to that. I just thought that was interesting, just came to mind then. But getting back around to Rebecca De Mornay, who steals the show in an already incredible cast, in my eyes. She's the reason that this movie, at points, is like really dark and depressing, and most of it hits in like this morally unsettling way. And I say morally unsettling as like the best way to describe it, because the way that she goes about her revenge on this family is just so low and slimy and creepy and personal. And like, I don't have a like family as in kids and a wife and everything, but just the way that she goes about this revenge, like, it just hits this certain nerve that is just so dark and unsettling. The seeds planted by Peyton, her character in this movie, are for the most part very well calculated to disrupt this family. And I do say for the most part because there's one point where I do feel like she slips up really bad, especially compared to how well her plan was working and going before that point. But I'll bring that up later when I get into some negatives. But Rebecca De Mornay, I just really do feel like she steals the show as Peyton in this movie. Now, throughout this review, I have been very open in talking about how much I do love this movie, but in an alternative universe, I'd love to see a version of this film where they keep Peyton's identity as the widow of this doctor under wraps for a little while longer. Like, avoid the scenes in the opening that I was talking about in my plot description, where they explain Peyton's backstory and how she relates to the situation and the characters and the doctor and everything. Keep that under wraps and save it for a reveal later on. Like, right from the start of the movie, us as a viewer, us watching the movie, we know how Peyton relates to the characters and situations, but the family doesn't. So imagine if they did keep us in the dark with how she relates to this situation, and we had the reveal at the same time that the family do. I feel like that would just be super fucking cool, super insane. But with that being said, I don't feel like it's a negative per se to the film. What I do think the movie does a really good job of is they keep her direct intentions with the family under wraps. Like, we do understand that she's trying to seek revenge, but what level of revenge is she going for? Through the title of the movie, you can probably presume like what she's going for. If you're familiar with the saying, "The hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world," you can kind of get a scope of what type of revenge or level of revenge she's going for here. But again, Rebecca De Mornay plays the nice girl who's secretly psychotic perfectly. Like, I really love when she has like these psychotic episodes through this movie. Like, there's a part where she's walking the kids through the park and some stranger comes up and says, "Oh, like, are these your kids? Like, oh, they really look like you." And she just plays along. She's like, "Yeah, these are my kids." And it's so fucking creepy. And there's a part where the daughter is talking about this bully that gives her a hard time at school. And Peyton just rocks up at the school and, yeah, like, assaults the kid, like, fucking almost like breaks his arm off. Like, it's crazy, but like, these psychotic breaks are so entertaining and so creepy. And it's also just really well written into the story too, where you can understand how she feels, even though she is such a terrifying character, and the way that she is going about these emotions and everything is completely wrong. Like, the scenes at the start of the movie where Peyton loses her baby, you know, it does these flips between scenes where it shows Claire, the mother of this family, you know, playing with her kids, and it's a whole happy family, and then it flips back to Peyton, who's just lost her baby, you know, because of a chain of events that started from Claire reporting her husband, even though the husband was a terrible guy. You have when Peyton shows up as the nanny for the first time at the house, you know, she's looking at this big, beautiful house, you know, family playing in the yard, white picket fence, and she's thinking, I could have had this life if my husband didn't die and I didn't lose the baby. And she's thinking about those things. And even when she sees Claire breastfeeding the newborn for the first time, she grabs her stomach straight away because she realizes what she lost. And you understand why Peyton is so upset, and you feel bad for her, but the way that she goes about it is terrifying and creepy and unsettling. And I just feel like it's really well written into the story and script, and really well portrayed by Rebecca De Mornay and the whole cast as well. So even though I do really love this movie, it's not quite perfect, and there's still a few negatives that I feel like I should bring up. They're nothing too major where it completely like dismantles this film in my eyes, but I feel like they're worthy of bringing up, and some of them are things that kind of bug me. So the one that I mentioned earlier, this kind of plot hiccup, and honestly it's the only plot hiccup that I can really think of off the top of my head, but it's the part where Claire is doing Peyton's laundry and finds the note in one of her like pant pockets or something. So there's a part earlier on where Peyton's on the phone with Marlene, and Marlene tells her to pass this message on to Claire, but Peyton has no intention of passing this message on to Claire. So why did she even write the note in the first place? Like, it's not like anyone was watching her on the phone and she had to, like, you know, play this front and like, yeah, I'm writing the message, blah blah blah, and I'm putting it in my pocket. Like, no one was watching her. And if she had no intention of giving it to Claire, like, why'd she write that note in the first place? It's just kind of annoying, because it feels like that scene and the note is solely there for Claire to find later on, so that she can piece things together and the plot can keep rolling. Like, if she had no intentions of telling Claire, why even write that note in the first place? Like, it just makes a problem for yourself further down the track if you, like what happens in this movie, forget that it's in your pocket. Like, for me, that's sort of a plot hiccup where I'm just like, ugh, like, everything was so smooth and so well calculated with your plan up until this point, and it feels like it's something that was easily avoided because, like I said, you didn't even need to write that note in the first place. And that's something that sort of stuck out with me watching the film this time around. But moving on from that, the ending or the final climax to this movie, also in my eyes is a little bit shaky. Again, it's not bad. This is definitely more of a nitpick compared to the note. I just feel like the ending, like it's convenient that the police don't show up because of some certain situations that happened beforehand. Michael breaking his legs, again, I just feel like it's kind of convenient for what happens in the climax. Kind of in general, how quickly Peyton reveals her true colours after people figure out what's going on. Like earlier in the movie, when people were maybe like slightly suspicious of Peyton and some of the things that she was doing, Peyton plays it very cool and calm and calculated, and she keeps her head in focus of what her goal is and everything. But then it gets to this part in the movie where people have clicked onto what she's doing, and she just drops the front like straight away and like almost goes immediately crazy. And it's just sort of like, like you were doing such a good job of playing this role, and even if you're being accused, like I feel like you could just play it a little bit longer and longer, but as I said, it's kind of nitpicky. The end of the movie, tone-wise, also does feel a little bit off to everything that happened before in the movie. And as I said, it's a nitpick because I still really like the ending of this movie. As I said, it's just tone-wise that feels a little bit different to everything that came beforehand. It just feels like the climax to this movie almost has like this slasher movie showdown sort of thing. It feels like the ending of a slasher film, especially with the final kill. I won't reveal what that is, but it just feels like something out of a slasher movie where, like I said, everything before that is psychological thriller, and it just has this crazy ending that, as I said, I like. So this is kind of a nitpick, but I will admit, tone-wise, it does feel a little bit off compared to what happened earlier in the film. Alright, wrapping this up and getting into my final thoughts and a rating, because this has definitely already been one of my longest random horror reviews, just because I had so much to talk about, because I honestly found a new love for this movie, and that's crazy because this is a movie I already loved, but like I said, it had been a little while since I last checked it out, like just off the top of my head, probably like 5 years, maybe even longer, but man, I had a great time coming back to watch this one. I loved it. Like I said, maybe some slight nitpicks and negatives. It's not a perfect film, but almost there. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Like really close to a 9.5. 9's still a great score, but like I said, some slight negatives and nitpicks. Like I said, the ending, even though I love the ending, I still really like it. Just tone-wise, it does feel a little bit off to what came beforehand. Like I said, still really like the ending, just a little bit different. But the main thing that really sticks out like a sore thumb is the part with the note. Like, as I said, her plan was so well crafted and calculated. It gets to a point in the movie where you're like, fuck, is Peyton actually going to get away with this? But then she slips up with the note, and like I said, it's so avoidable because she didn't even really need to write the note. It's just like, ugh. But I don't know, maybe I missed something with the note. Like, honestly, I did watch this movie maybe a week ago before recording it for this review. So if you've seen it more recently, maybe I missed something there with the note and, she did need to write it or something. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I really don't feel like I am. To me, that's like the only slip up. But like I said, 9 out of 10. Rewatching the movie this time around was also the first time I sort of found comparisons between this and Inside. And if you've seen Inside, really different films, tone-wise and, with some of the things going on. But there's also plot points and lines that do cross over. And I was like, kind of interesting there. But doing a comparison to Inside also kind of gives away Peyton's intentions. So hopefully you don't put that together. But yeah, sort of saw crossovers there. It wasn't actually till I was doing a bit of research for this review and just, going over some points and everything that I found out that they're actually doing a remake to this movie. I don't know when the remake is coming out. I just know it's in development. And I was sort of a bit mixed on hearing news that they're doing a remake because I kind of don't feel like a remake is necessary because this movie is still good and it still holds up for the most part. Like, I get that it's an older film, it's from the early 90s, so, it's over 30 years old now, but like, I still think it's pretty good. Like, you don't see anyone remaking, other good movies like Jaws and whatever. I'm not saying it's on the same level of Jaws, the people will get different enjoyment out of two different types of movies like that, but I feel like this movie still holds up and it's still really solid. So, the more I think about it, it's probably just to more so bring this film to a new modern audience. And like I said, this movie is from the early 90s, so now I'm thinking of it in that way. Unless you like grew up with this movie and you're familiar with it, I feel like most modern audiences probably haven't seen The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, so maybe that's the idea behind doing a remake, just bringing it to light for a new audience. Everything else that I saw from the remake is pretty interesting. It has a pretty good cast. It had Micah Monroe. Who else was in it? Mary Elizabeth Winstead was also in it. Like, solid two lead actresses there. I wonder who will play Claire and who will play Peyton. I didn't check that. I remember the director attached wasn't anyone I was too familiar with or familiar with their work, but I don't know, a remake could be interesting. Let me know if you're excited for a remake for The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. If you've seen this movie, let me know your thoughts of it in the comments below. And if you're still watching up until this point, because as I said, this has got to be one of my longest random horror reviews. So if you're still watching up until this point, let me know in the comments below, because much appreciated, much love. Sometimes I do wonder how long into my videos people are just like, yeah, no, that's enough. I've had enough, because I get that. I've had a lot of comments where people are like, oh, you need to be more engaging. You need to show scenes from the film and all that. And I'm just like, no, I don't really need to at all, actually. Like, I just like talking about the movies like I'm talking to a friend across the table and, discussing the film and whatever. Like, that's the people that I watch on YouTube, and I find it engaging. I don't mind when, things pop up on the screen and, I get to look at the film myself, but I just like having someone to talk about these movies to, and I find this format engaging. So, like I said, if you're still watching up until this point, drop a comment below, and I'll make sure to send you some love. I really appreciate it. But thank you for joining me for this random horror review, guys, and I'll see you for another video soon. Peace.